firm in the Best of Indiana County contest, Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Greg, good morning.
Good morning, Todd. How you doing?
I'm wonderful, wonderful. Hope you're enjoying spring training. Has it been fun?
It has been. Yeah, it's been, it flies. I tell you, it's been here now a couple of weeks, and before you know it, we'll be heading over to Miami to start the regular season, March 28th. So it can at times, maybe in the middle of the month, I'll change my mind. When you ask me that question, I might have a different answer. It is early. It seems like we go through phases. Steve Blaswell we'd kid Steve about that. He'd always talk about this. So when he was on the air with us about how there were three phases. He loved the three phases of spring training: the excitement of the reporting and getting going. The games begin and everybody's fun, and then the monotony of the middle of it, where you kind of just do the grind out phase, he'd call it.
Yeah.
And then the last stretch, the home stretch, with the anticipation of opening the regular season, and the excitement builds again toward that. And he's probably right. That's about where we are. So we're still early, and the grind part won't happen, I guess, maybe for another week or so.
Now, it's a heck of a lot more fun, though, if they're swinging the sticks like they were yesterday, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we say it time and time again that the spring training records are meaningless, wins and losses, but you look at individual performances, and you don't like to lose. Heck, if you're playing tiddlywinks, you want to win regardless if you're a competitor, and these guys are all competitors, so they get their first win of the spring, and then individual performances is kind of what you're looking at. You're looking at, for players that are established, you're looking to see their timing to get going again. Brian Hayes hit a grand slam moments after Brian Reynolds went back to the dugout dejected that the third base umpire had called him out on a swing on an appeal, and that was the second out of the inning. The Pirates were trailing the Braves 4-0, and then Brian Hayes gets up there and fouls off a handful of tough pitches before he gets a hanging breaking ball from the pitcher and crushes it for a grand slam that ties it. And 2 innings later, Reynolds gets up there, the switch hitter batting right-handed against a lefty pitcher, and he hits a home run over the center field batter's eye, the green monster at Lecom. That's 32 feet high and cleared it easily and just kind of wowed the crowd. And just it was really impressive. And then in the 6th inning, it was 2 younger players who hit home runs for the Pirates, a catcher in the system named Abraham Gutierrez and an infielder that followed him. They went back-to-back, Justin Glenn. And so it was good to see. And I was thinking, Todd, yesterday watching batting practice, which I don't often do in spring training, but I was down there chatting with some people, and I just kind of looked over it. I was over by the first base dugout and watching, and here's Rowdy Tellez, the new Pirate, who 2 years ago for the Brewers hit 35 homers. He's going to be the first baseman most nights. And he was just absolutely he's got left-hand hitting power that we've not seen for a while.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe you put Jack Sawinski perhaps in that category, but even Tellez, I don't want to exaggerate it, but the last guy that I can remember that was like a Josh Bell or Pedro Alvarez from the left side. And then there was Sawinski up there, and then O'Neal Cruz, who talk about power potential, just hitting bombs, and then there's Henry Davis, who looks like a Steelers linebacker right now. He's so strong, and there's such a quick bat, and he was hitting home runs over the left field pavilion that had people laughing. I mean, it was hysterical. Like the other players are like going, "How do you do that?" 2 days ago, Termarr Johnson, who's 19 years old, is the top second base prospect in baseball for the Pirates and a first-round pick 2 years ago. He hit 2 home runs at Dunedin. Now, I was not there. It was a webcast. It was broadcast on Pirates.com with Joe Block and Neil Walker. And I worked the radio side with Neil yesterday, and I asked him, because I wasn't there, but I did see the highlights, and they were no question, they were home runs well beyond the wall in right center field that Termarr Johnson hit. And I assumed that the wind was gusting out. And Neil said, no, that wasn't the case. There was really no wind at all. And so all this brought back a memory maybe 2 decades ago that I had when a former Pirate player, they used to bring a handful of former Pirates in to kind of guest instruct for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during batting practice, and I forget who the former Pirate player was that was out there shagging fly balls in the outfield. And he kind of jokingly said, I noticed that when the other team is up, they really don't need anybody to shag fly balls because they're all home runs during batting practice. But I'm working my tail off here because all of our players hit fly balls barely to the warning track. How come we don't have guys that hit home runs? And I've thought about that on occasion over the years. And I'm not saying that all these players are going to hit 30 homers this year, but it's been a long time since a Pirates team and organization has actually had players, even in batting practice, that hit these home runs. And that's what I'm seeing now. And so the potential is there. And we saw some of that come to fruition in yesterday's game.
Yeah, BP gets loud. That's good news for Pirates fans. I want to talk as well with you today, Greg, about Pirates pitching, because yesterday I was sitting there daydreaming, and I was thinking, what's this Pirates rotation look like in a couple of years? And I went with Keller and Skeens, and then I went Bubba Chandler, Jared Jones, Anthony Solomito. There's your five. I didn't even put Quinn Priester in that group, but Quinn Priester pitches today, and he's a former number 1 draft pick. We're really going to be interested to see how he sets up with the Pirates. Does he make the team? Does he go to Indy? And what is a guy like Quinn Priester's future?
Well, I mean, you nailed it, I think, Todd, in terms of, and I won't go out on a limb and say that Priester's not going to be part of it, but that's certainly what you need. You need pitchers to the point where you're wondering where somebody like a Quinn Priester, who has a big pedigree, where does he fit in a couple years? If you had Skeens and Jones, Solomito, that's a really good question in terms of this year. If Luis Ortiz pitches like he did yesterday, where he's back to throwing 96, 97, 98. That's a big fastball from a big guy, and he pitched 2 essentially scoreless innings. There was an unearned run, and Contreras gets his breaking ball and his fastball back like he did a couple days ago. And again, talking to Neil Walker yesterday about how he looked in his spring training debut. Not only was that fastball up to 95, 96 again, but the breaking ball, and he said, and you could tell he had hitters kind of out of kilter. And so now you add those guys to the possible mix in a rotation. And then back to your original question, where does Priester fit in? The good thing is I think Priester knows that, and not that he didn't in the past. And he's not a slacker by any stretch. He's a hard worker, but he knows that the time is now for him to step up if he wants to be a part of this year's rotation and or pitching staff. He's got to make hay now. So, as we say, the games are meaningless in terms of wins and losses. But for a guy like Quinn Priester, who makes his spring training debut today, it's important because they're looking at all this stuff for 2024 and beyond, and they need pitching. You need starting pitching. As Ben Sherrington said, you don't need 5. You need 8 to 10 on a good team because inevitably they're going to get hurt, and there's going to be some, if not injury, ineffectiveness, where you're going to call upon your depth, and so that I think it bodes well that we're talking about a guy like Quinn Priester, and does he even fit in? That's good to hear.
Yeah, finding out whether or not there's a spot for a guy like him is really going to be fascinating to watch that unfold. Then you've got guys like Burrows and others coming up through the system too, coming back from injury, and Brubaker, and there's a lot of arms that the Pirates have to sort through here in spring training. The big question of the day for you today, Greg, is you mentioned former Buccos that used to come back. Tell me some names. Who have you seen there this year, ex-Buccos that you've seen hanging around Bradenton?
Well, a lot of them, actually, it's interesting, though, a lot of them live in Bradenton, and I had not seen all of them yet. I've seen, it's funny, one guy that lives in Jacksonville, and I had not seen in a couple years, but when I first got down here, Steve Blass made the mistake of calling me and asking me if I wanted to golf with him and Jim Rooker.
Yeah.
And I say he made the mistake, but he knows me very well. Steve and I have golfed together more. I think I golfed with Steve more than anybody else in my life. Steve knows how bad I am as a golfer. That shows you how desperate he was for another player that I did go. But it was just so much fun to hang out with those guys and hear their stories, and afterward have a beer in the grill. I just think so highly of Rook, who, as I say, he lives in Jacksonville, but was down in the area for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. Mike LaValliere lives here. Don Robinson lives here in Bradenton. Henry Davis has bought a home here in Bradenton. There are a handful of Charlie Morton lives in the Bradenton area, and I know there are others I'm forgetting. Now I have not seen. I don't know that they do the guest instructing anymore. I understand that Jack Wilson is coming down next week,
nice.
And might go in the backfield and work with a couple of the shortstops. But for the most part, a lot of them, to be honest with you, Todd, a lot of them are in the Pirate broadcast booth. Neil will do his final game today, and then he'll head north. I think he's going to Pinehurst with some buddies to golf, the son of a gun. Then Matt Capps is coming in toward the end. Kevin Young returns. Obviously, Bob Walk and John Wayner. Michael McHenry was down here for a few days. Stephen Brault has been added to the pre- and post-game shows, the former pitcher. Yeah. Alex Presley and Jordy Mercer are also going to do games. So we'll see a lot of them, if not this spring, certainly during the summer.
I used to love watching Alex Presley hit because he was just a little guy and he could bomb it. Man.
And he could, and he gave it 100. That's an old cliche, 110%. But he certainly gave every ounce of his 100% when he grinded out an at bat. And I loved watching his effort as he ran. He never gave in on anything. You're right. He was kind of a smaller statured guy who lives in the Pittsburgh area now, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And we had a chance. Michael McHenry and I have started a podcast called Hold My Cutter. And we sit there and have a cigar in a tavern in Pittsburgh and over a beverage and smoke a stogie and talk baseball with these guys. We brought in Alex Presley and chatted with him for, my gosh, a couple of hours. And fascinating story. And it's going to be great to see him doing some pre- and post-game show work with us this year.
Yeah. And Jordy, if we could only convince him to come back as a pitcher now, because he was a heck of a pitcher in college.
Oh, yeah. And so was, I understand, Henry Davis was telling Neil Walker the story about a guy in camp who was a shortstop. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to forget who the heck it was yesterday. We had so many players. That's the other thing, too, about spring training early on. The dance of pitchers that come in is unbelievable. Yeah. But anyway, he had somebody who he faced in college. He was at Louisville, and this guy came in as a pitcher and was stunned at how good he was. So that happens in college, I guess, on occasion. You'll see these guys pitch. I think it was Jack Brannigan.
Yeah, Brannigan was a pitcher.
Was a part-time pitcher at Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's him.
So anyway, that's interesting stuff.
He and Bubba Chandler. He was a pitcher in college, too. Hey, Greg, it's been fun again this morning. Enjoy the day off. You got to talk to me. It's not much of a day off, huh? Well,
Todd, it's work. It is work, but I'll enjoy the rest of the day. Might stop down at LECOM. I keep wanting to call it McKechnie. Might stop down at LECOM and see a little bit of Priester.
There you go.
As they take on the Tigers. And Paul Skeens, by the way, makes his debut tomorrow against Corbin Burns down in Sarasota against the Orioles.
Yeah, nobody's going to be paying any attention to that.